Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you try to solve your life through thinking, the thinking itself becomes the problem? You sit down, perhaps in the evening, perhaps in a rare, quiet moment, and instead of finding rest, you find a courtroom. A trial is already in session. You are the defendant, the prosecutor, and somehow also the judge. The case being argued is your life, what you did wrong, what someone else did to you, what might go wrong tomorrow, what you should have said 3 years ago, what you need to fix before you can finally be okay. And the trial never ends. This is the condition of the modern human mind. Not because something is wrong with you specifically, not because you're broken or weak or spiritually insufficient, but because you have been living inside a case of mistaken identity so complete, so total, that it feels like the most natural thing in the world. You believe you're your thoughts. You believe the voice in your head is you, and from that single misunderstanding, almost all human suffering is born. Let us stay with this for a moment. Right now, as you listen to these words, there is something happening that most people never stop to notice. There is the voice that speaks, the commentary, the narrator of your life, the one who judges, compares, worries, plans, remembers, and anticipates. And then, very quietly, almost invisibly, there is something that is aware of that voice, something that hears it, something that notices it, that noticing that awareness that is not the voice, that is something else entirely. And that something else is what you actually are, but we are moving ahead of ourselves. Before we can understand what we truly are, we must first see, with great clarity and great compassion, what we have mistakenly believed ourselves to be. Most people, if you ask them who they are, will give you a story. They will tell you their name, their profession, their history, their relationships, their achievements, their wounds. They will tell you what happened to them as a child. They will tell you what they are hoping for in the future. They will construct in words a self, a narrative self, a self made entirely of thought, and this self feels absolutely real. It feels like the most real thing there is, because it is the only self you have ever known. But here's what is worth examining. That self, that story, where does it actually exist? It exists in thought. It exists in memory, which is thought looking backward. It exists in anticipation, which is thought looking forward. It exists in interpretation, in the story you tell about what things mean, about what you mean, about what life means. Take away the thinking, and where is that self? This is not a trick question. This is an invitation to look very directly at something most people spend their entire lives avoiding, because when the thinking quiets, even for a moment, something remains. Something is still here, something is aware. Something is present, but it has no story, it has no name, it has no past and no future. It is simply, purely, completely here. That is what we are pointing toward. Now the mind will immediately try to make this into a problem. The mind will say, well, if I'm not my thoughts, then what am I? And then it will try to think its way to an answer. It will construct a new concept, a new idea, a new story about consciousness or awareness or the self. And it will present this new story as understanding, but this is the mind doing what the mind always does. It is trying to possess the truth the way it possesses everything else, by turning it into a concept, by wrapping it in words, by making it into something it can manage and control. The truth we are pointing to cannot be thought. It can only be recognized, and the recognition happens not in the mind, but through a kind of interior stillness that the mind cannot manufacture. So let us not rush. Let us not try to think our way through this. Let us instead move slowly, carefully, like someone walking through a room in the dark, trusting each step. There's a voice in your head. You know this voice intimately. You have been listening to it your entire life. It wakes you up at 3 in the morning with urgent worries that dissolve by morning. It replays conversations you had years ago, editing them, improving your responses, imagining different outcomes. It constructs elaborate scenarios of future catastrophes and then argues with itself about how to prevent them. It compares you to other people, finds you lacking, then defends you against those comparisons, then finds you lacking again. This voice is extraordinarily busy. It is almost never silent. And when it does go quiet for a moment, perhaps in nature, perhaps in deep absorption in something beautiful, perhaps in the space, just after waking and just before the day's concerns arrive, you feel something, a lightness, a spaciousness, a sense that something is right, that something is okay, that existence itself is somehow acceptable, and then the voice comes back and it says, ah yes, that was a nice moment.
I wonder how I can have more of those. In that very movement, in that very grasping, the peace disappears. This is not a coincidence. The peace you experienced in that moment of quiet was not produced by anything.
It was not an achievement. It was not the result of having solved your problems or secured your future. It was simply what was there when the noise of thinking temporarily ceased. It was the background. It was what was always already present beneath the surface activity of the mind. And this is perhaps the most radical thing that can be said. The peace you're looking for is not something you need to find. It is something you need to stop covering up. The mind finds this deeply unsatisfying. The mind wants a project. The mind wants a path with steps, a method, a system, a goal to achieve. The mind says, tell me what to do and I will do it. Tell me how to be peaceful and I will work very hard at being peaceful. But working hard at being peaceful is not peace. It is just more activity, more noise, more doing dressed up in spiritual clothing. What is being pointed to here is something far simpler and far more radical than any technique or practice. It is a seeing, a recognition, a moment of genuine clarity about the nature of what you are and what you're not. And that recognition, once it happens, even partially, even briefly, changes everything. Let us now look more closely at what the mind does with time, because this is where much of human suffering is manufactured. The mind lives in time, not in the present moment, but in what we might call psychological time. The past as a source of identity, the future as a source of salvation or threat, the present moment, the actual now, is almost entirely ignored by the mind. The mind passes through the present on its way from the past to the future, barely stopping, barely noticing. Think about how you experience an ordinary day. You wake up, and before your eyes are fully open, the mind is already in motion. It is retrieving the concerns of yesterday. It is projecting the demands of today. It is constructing a mental map of the hours ahead, filling them with tasks and worries and expectations. The actual experience of waking, the feeling of the body, the quality of the light, the simple fact of being alive and conscious, this is barely noticed at all. Then the day proceeds and the mind is rarely here. It is in the meeting that already happened, replaying what was said. It is in the conversation that hasn't happened yet, rehearsing what you will say. It is in the weekend that is still days away, or in the vacation that is months away, or in the version of your life that will exist once certain conditions are finally met. And the actual moments of the day, the texture of your coffee cup in your hands, the way the afternoon light falls through the window, the sound of rain, the simple aliveness of breathing, these pass almost entirely unnoticed. This is not a small thing. This is the loss of your life, not your life in some abstract philosophical sense, your actual life, the only life that is ever happening, the only life that is ever real. Because the past no longer exists, it is gone. It exists now only as memory, as thought, as the story the mind tells about what happened, and the future does not yet exist. It exists now only as imagination, as thought, as the story the mind tells about what might happen. The only moment that is ever actually, genuinely, undeniably real is this one. Now, this present moment, this breath, this awareness and yet we spend almost no time here. The mind has a very good reason for this from its own perspective. The mind believes that if it thinks about the past enough, it can extract a lesson that will protect it from future pain. And if it thinks about the future enough, it can anticipate and prevent all possible threats. The mind believes that its survival, and by extension your survival, depends on this constant vigilance, this ceaseless mental activity. But here's what the mind does not see. Most of the suffering it experiences is not caused by actual events in the present moment. It is caused by its own thinking about events past or future that are not actually happening right now. Sit with that for a moment. Right now, in this moment, are you actually in danger? Not in the story of your life, not in the narrative the mind is constructing, but here now, in this breath, in this moment of simply being in most cases. The answer is no. In most cases, the actual present moment is entirely workable. It is the thought-generated past and the thought-generated future that are unbearable. This is what the great teachers have always pointed to. The suffering is in the resistance to what is. The suffering is in the mind's insistence that things should be different from what they are. The suffering is in the story, not in the fact. A fact can be dealt with. A story about a fact can imprison you forever. Now, we must speak about something that may be uncomfortable to hear. There's a part of the human psyche that does not want to be free of suffering. There is a part of you that is deeply invested in your pain, in your story of victimhood or resentment or unworthiness. This is what has been called the pain body. The pain body is not a metaphor. It is a very real phenomenon. It is an accumulation of old emotional pain that has not been fully felt and released. It lives in the body. It has its own energy, its own momentum, its own agenda. And its agenda is to survive, to feed, to grow. And how does it feed? Through more pain, through more drama, through more conflict and resentment and grief and fear. This is why when you are in the grip of the pain body, you find yourself doing things that seem to go against your own interests. You pick fights for no reason. You dwell on painful memories even when you have consciously decided to let them go. You find yourself drawn to people or situations that reliably cause you pain. You read the comment that you know will upset you. You revisit the argument in your mind again and again, long after it is over. The mind watching this behavior is baffled. Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I stop? What is wrong with me? But there's nothing wrong with you. You are simply not yet seeing clearly what is happening. The pain body is using the mind to feed itself. It is generating thoughts that trigger emotional pain and then feeding on that pain and then generating more thoughts, and so the cycle continues. The key insight here, the thing that breaks the cycle, is not to try to stop the pain body through willpower or positive thinking. That does not work. You cannot fight the pain body and win, because the fighting itself is more energy for it to feed on. The only thing that dissolves the pain body is the light of conscious awareness. When you can watch the pain body in operation, not from inside it, not identified with it, not believing its thoughts, but from the position of the witness, the observer, the one who is simply aware, then something remarkable happens. The pain body begins to lose its power. It cannot survive in the light of full, non-judgmental awareness. It needs the darkness of unconscious identification to thrive. This brings us to what may be the most important thing that can be said in this entire exploration. You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your pain body, you're not your story. You're not the voice in your head, you are the awareness that is aware of all these things. Read that again, not with the mind, not to analyze it, but to feel the truth of it. Right now, there are thoughts arising in you, perhaps thoughts about what you're hearing, perhaps thoughts about your own life, your own situation, your own pain. These thoughts are arising, they are happening, and something is aware of them. Something is watching them. Something notices that they are there. that noticing, that awareness, that is not a thought. You cannot think awareness. You can think about awareness, but the thinking about it is not it. The awareness itself is prior to thought. It is the space in which thought arises, and that awareness, that space, is what you fundamentally are. This is not a belief system. This is not a new story to replace the old one. This is a direct invitation to notice something that is already true, that has always been true, that is true right now as you listen to these words. You're reading these words or hearing them, and something is here that is aware of that, something is present, something is awake. That presence, that wakefulness is not located in your thoughts. It is not located in your past or your future. It is here, now, in this moment, unchanging, undisturbed. The thoughts come and go, the emotions rise and fall, the situations of your life change constantly. But the awareness that is aware of all of it, that remains, that is always here, that is always now, this is what some traditions call the witness. Others call it pure consciousness, others call it presence. The name does not matter. What matters is the recognition. What matters is the direct seeing of this, and here is the extraordinary thing. The moment you genuinely recognize yourself as the awareness, rather than the content of awareness, something shifts. Not dramatically, not with trumpets and visions, but quietly, subtly, profoundly. There's a release, a sense of coming home to something that was never actually lost, because you were never actually lost. The awareness was always here, you simply forgot to notice it. You were so absorbed in the content of the mind, so identified with the story, so caught up in the drama of thoughts and emotions, that you forgot the space in which all of it was happening. Now the mind will try to turn this into another project. It will say, okay, I need to become more aware, I need to practice being the witness, I need to achieve this state of consciousness. And immediately there is a future goal, a self who needs to improve a gap between where I am now and where I should be. This is the ego's most subtle trick. It takes the teaching of presence and makes it into another reason to be absent. It takes the recognition of the now and makes it into a future achievement. So let us be very clear about this. There's nothing to achieve. There is nowhere to go. There is no future version of you that will finally be present. Presence is not a future achievement. Presence is what is here when you stop trying to be somewhere else. The shift we are talking about is not a matter of effort, it is a matter of recognition. And recognition can happen in an instant. In fact, it can only happen in an instant, because an instant is all the now ever is. Let us talk about what this actually looks like in the texture of ordinary life, because this is not only for meditation retreats or spiritual seekers. This is for the person who is stuck in traffic and feeling the familiar tightening of frustration. This is for the person who lies awake at 3 a.m. with the mind running its catastrophic simulations. This is for the person who cannot stop replaying a painful conversation or cannot stop dreading a difficult one. When you find yourself in the grip of the mind, when the thinking is loud and urgent and relentless, the first and most important step is simply to notice it, not to stop it, not to judge it. Not to tell yourself you should not be thinking this way, simply to notice there's thinking happening, there's anxiety arising, there's a story being told, and you can notice this. You can step back even slightly, even for a moment, into the position of the one who notices, and in that step back, however small, there's a space, a breath, a moment of not being completely inside the thought. And that moment, that tiny space of awareness, is the beginning of freedom. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to feel like enlightenment. It might feel like almost nothing at all, but it is everything. Because in that moment, you are no longer completely identified with the mind. You're no longer entirely inside the story. There is a you that is watching, and that watching is the most important thing you can do. The watching does not require effort. It requires only attention, And attention is not something you have to manufacture. Attention is what you are when you're not distracted. So when the mind is running its familiar loops, its worries and regrets and resentments, instead of trying to stop it, instead of trying to think your way out of it, instead of suppressing it or arguing with it, simply watch it. Watch it the way you would watch clouds moving across the sky. The clouds are not you, the sky is you. The thoughts are the clouds, the awareness is the sky. The clouds can be dark and heavy and dramatic. They can fill the entire visible sky, but they are still not the sky. The sky is still there behind them, beneath them, around them, unchanged, unchangeable. And you are the sky. This metaphor is not just poetic. It is pointing to something experientially true. When you're identified with the clouds, when you believe you're the thoughts and the emotions, the sky seems to disappear. The darkness of the clouds is all there is. The storm feels total and permanent. But when you remember that you are the sky, when you find even a small amount of that witnessing awareness, the clouds are still there, the storm may still be raging, but it no longer feels total. It no longer feels like all there is. There's something in you that is not caught in the storm, something that is watching it, and from that place of watching a very different kind of action becomes possible. Not the reactive, compulsive, fear-driven action of the identified mind, but a clear, grounded, present-centered response to what is actually happening right now. In this moment, this is not passivity, this is not resignation. This is not telling yourself that nothing matters or that you should not care about your life. It is the opposite of that. When you are no longer driven by the frantic energy of the identified mind, when you are no longer reacting from the accumulated pain of the past or the imagined threats of the future, you can actually see what is in front of you. You can actually respond to what is real rather than to the story about what is real. And from that clarity, from that groundedness in the present moment, your actions become far more effective, far more intelligent, far more genuinely helpful to yourself and to others. Now let us speak about something that many people find difficult: the resistance to the present moment, the refusal to accept what is. The mind has a very strong habit of arguing with reality. It says, this should not be happening. This is not fair. This is not how things were supposed to go. This is not acceptable. And in that argument, in that resistance, there is suffering. Not because the situation itself is unbearable, but because the resistance to the situation creates a kind of internal war that is exhausting and painful and ultimately completely futile. Because the present moment is what it is. Your resistance to it changes nothing about the external reality. It only adds an internal layer of suffering on top of whatever is already difficult. This is one of the most liberating recognitions available to a human being. The suffering is not in the situation. The suffering is in the resistance to the situation. Now, this is not the same as saying that difficult situations are not difficult. They are. Loss is real, pain is real, injustice is real. We are not pretending otherwise. We are not putting on a spiritual smile and pretending that everything is fine. What we are saying is that there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the direct experience of something difficult. Suffering is the mental story that is added on top of the pain. The why me, the this is unfair, the this should not be happening, the what if it never gets better, the I cannot bear this, the pain may be unavoidable. The suffering is optional. And the way out of the suffering is not to deny the pain, not to pretend it is not there, not to perform a spiritual bypass that skips over the genuine difficulty of being human. The way out is through the direct present moment experience of what is actually here without the additional weight of the mental story. When you are in pain and you can feel the pain directly without the story, without the resistance, without the mental commentary about the pain, something remarkable happens. The pain is still there perhaps, but it is clean, it is just what it is. It does not have the additional manufactured quality of suffering layered on top of it. And often when you can meet the present moment fully, whatever it contains, you discover that it is more bearable than the mind story about it suggested. The mind story is almost always worse than the reality. The mind is extraordinarily skilled at catastrophizing, at inflating pain, at projecting the worst possible future. The actual present moment met directly without the mind's interference is almost always workable. This is what is meant by surrender. Not surrender in the sense of giving up, of becoming passive, of accepting injustice without response, but surrender in the sense of releasing the internal war against what is, releasing the argument with reality, allowing the present moment to be as it is while responding to it with full intelligence and full presence. This kind of surrender is not weakness. It is the deepest form of strength because it requires the courage to stop running, to stop fighting, to stop hiding inside the mind's endless stories, and to simply be here with whatever is here. And when you can do this, when you can genuinely meet the present moment without resistance, something opens, something relaxes, something that has been held very tightly for a very long time begins to release. And in that release, there is a peace that is not dependent on circumstances, not the peace of having solved all your problems, not the peace of having secured your future, not the peace of having finally gotten what you wanted, but the peace of being fully here, fully present, fully alive in this moment. This peace is always available. It is never more than one breath away. It does not require you to have a perfect life or a perfect mind. It requires only that you stop for a moment running away from the present moment, that you stop for a moment living inside the story, that you allow yourself to simply be here. Now the ego will object. The ego will say, but I have real problems. My life is genuinely difficult. I cannot just sit here being present while everything falls apart. I have things to do, problems to solve, a future to secure. And this is true. There are things to do. There are problems to address. There is a life to live. We are not suggesting that you abandon your responsibilities or pretend that your life's challenges do not exist, but here's the question. When you are dealing with your challenges, when you are solving your problems, when you're taking action in your life, where are you doing this from? Are you doing it from the frantic, fear-driven, story-saturated space of the identified mind, or are you doing it from the clear, grounded, present space of awareness? Because the quality of your actions, the intelligence of your responses, the creativity of your solutions, all of this is profoundly affected by the state of consciousness from which you are acting. A mind that is caught in the story, that is driven by fear and resistance and identification with the past, is not operating at its full capacity. It is spending enormous amounts of energy on the internal war, on the resistance, on the story, leaving very little for the actual task at hand. A mind that is grounded in presence, that is not fighting the present moment, that is not lost in the past or the future, but is fully here now, attending to what is actually in front of it. This mind is extraordinarily clear, extraordinarily capable, extraordinarily effective. So presence is not an alternative to effective action. Presence is the foundation of the most effective action possible. Let us come now to something very practical, very simple. Something you can do, or rather something you can be right now. Take a moment, just a moment, to feel your body from the inside. Not to think about your body, not to analyze it or judge it, but to feel it. The aliveness in your hands, the weight of your body where it rests against whatever you're sitting on, the movement of your breath, the rise and fall of the chest, the slight expansion and contraction of the belly. The sounds around you, not analyzed, not labeled, just heard. This is the present moment. This is what is actually here. right now beneath all the thinking. And notice, even as you do this, that the thinking may not have stopped. Thoughts may still be arising, and that is perfectly fine. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to notice the space in which the thinking is happening, to notice that you are aware of the thinking, to notice that there is a you that is larger than the thinking, that contains the thinking, that is not disturbed by the thinking. The breath is an extraordinary anchor to the present moment, because the breath is always now. You cannot breathe in the past, you cannot breathe in the future, you can only breathe now. And so when the mind is lost in time, when the story is very loud, returning attention to the breath is returning to now, not as a technique to suppress thinking, but as a gentle reminder of where you actually are. You are here, you are now, whatever the mind is saying, whatever story it is telling, whatever drama it is staging, the actual fact is that you are here now, breathing, aware, and that is enough. That is, in fact, everything. There is something else that is worth saying about the nature of this awareness, this presence that you are. It is not personal. This is perhaps the most surprising thing about it. When you touch the space of pure awareness, you discover that it does not feel like a small, separate, isolated self. It feels open, vast, spacious. It feels in some way that is difficult to put into words, like it is not entirely yours, not entirely private, not entirely separate from everything else. The mind creates the sense of separation. The mind says, I am here, and everything else is out there. I am this body, this history, this set of thoughts and feelings, and everything beyond that is other, is separate, is potentially threatening. But in the space of pure awareness, that sense of separation softens. Not because you dissolve into some mystical nothingness, but because you recognize that the awareness in you and the awareness in all living things is not fundamentally different. It is the same awareness looking out through different eyes. This is not a belief, this is not a philosophical position. This is something that can be directly experienced when the mind's noise is quiet enough to allow it. And when it is experienced even briefly, even partially, it changes the way you relate to other people. It changes the way you relate to the world, because when you recognize yourself in the other even slightly, the compulsive need to defend yourself against them, to compete with them, to judge them, begins to relax. Not because you become naive or lose your discernment, but because the fundamental sense of threat, the sense that the other is alien and dangerous, that sense which the ego requires for its own survival, begins to lose its grip. You begin to see that the person in front of you, however difficult, however lost in their own ego, is also a consciousness, also an awareness, also a being who is suffering in the same way you have suffered from the same mistaken identity, from the same confusion about who they are. And from that, seeing something becomes possible that was not possible before. Genuine compassion, not the performed compassion of someone who is trying to be a good person, not the pity that secretly contains superiority, but the real thing, the recognition of shared humanity, the recognition of shared consciousness, the recognition that we are at the deepest level, not as separate as we appear. This is not sentimentality. This is a direct perception of something that is true. Now, we are approaching the end of this exploration, and it would be dishonest to suggest that what we have been pointing to is easily achieved or permanently stabilized through a single listening or a single moment of recognition. The mind is extraordinarily habitual. The patterns of identification of ego, of living in psychological time, these are deeply ingrained. They have been reinforced for years, for decades, perhaps for your entire life. They will not dissolve overnight, and that is entirely fine. The path of awakening is not a straight line from sleep to enlightenment. It is more like the gradual brightening of a room as dawn approaches. There are moments of great clarity, followed by moments of being entirely lost again in the mind. There are periods of deep peace, followed by periods when the old patterns reassert themselves with full force. This is not failure. This is the process. And the most important thing you can do in those moments when you're lost again, when you're back inside the story, when the ego has reclaimed its grip, is not to judge yourself for it, because the judgment is just more ego. The voice that says, I should be more present by now. I have been listening to this teaching for months and I'm still getting caught in the same patterns. That voice is the ego trying to maintain its position by making even your spiritual progress into a new story of inadequacy. The only response to that voice is the same response as always. Notice it, watch it, recognize it as thought, not as truth, and then gently, without drama, without self-congratulation or self-condemnation, return to now, this is the practice, not a grand, heroic, once and for all awakening, but this simple, humble, infinitely repeatable act of returning, of noticing that you have been lost in thought and coming back, of noticing that you have been living in the story and stepping out of it, even for a moment. Each time you do this, something deepens, something in you recognizes the way home a little more easily. The gaps between identification and recognition become shorter. The space of awareness becomes more familiar, more accessible, more natural, and over time, gradually the center of gravity of your being shifts. Not from a suffering self to a perfect self. Not from a broken person to an enlightened person, but from the story to the presence, from the noise to the stillness, from the mind to the awareness. And in that shift, everything changes. Not because your external circumstances have changed, though they may, not because you have solved all your problems, though you will handle them more skillfully, but because the quality of your experience of being alive changes fundamentally. The ordinary moments of life, the ones the mind always dismissed as nothing, as just the boring stuff between the important events, these become vivid, alive, full, the light on the floor in the morning, the feeling of water on your hands, the sound of wind, the simple fact of breathing, of being here, of being alive and conscious in this extraordinary, mysterious universe. These things, which the mind always passed over in its rush toward the next important thing, reveal themselves as extraordinary, as miraculous, as more than enough, because they are the actual content of your life. Not the stories, not the plans, not the achievements, not the accumulated history of your personal self. This now, this moment, this breath, this awareness, this is your life. This is all there ever is. And it is, when you are fully here for it, more than you could have imagined. The peace you have been seeking through all your thinking, through all your planning, through all your striving and achieving and defending and acquiring, that peace is not at the end of any of those roads. It is not in the future you are trying to secure. It is not in the past you are trying to understand or correct. It is here, now, in this moment of simply being. You do not have to earn it. You do not have to deserve it. You do not have to understand it fully before you can have it. You only have to stop running away from it. And right now, in this moment, you can stop. You can feel the weight of your personal history, all the stories of who you are and what has been done to you and what you have done and what you fear and what you hope for. And you can feel the extraordinary weight of all of that. The exhaustion of carrying it, the tiredness of being that person, that story, that ongoing project of self-maintenance. And you can, just for a moment, set it down, not permanently, not in some grand gesture of spiritual renunciation, just for this moment, just for this breath, just right now. Set down the story of who you are, set down the past that defines you and the future that awaits you. Set down the voice that is always commenting, always judging, always trying to figure everything out, and notice what remains. Something is here, something is aware, something is quiet, and still and present and entirely okay, that something is you, the real you, the you that was never born and will never die, the you that is not damaged by your history or threatened by your future. The you that is not the sum of your mistakes or your achievements, the you that is simply, purely, completely aware, rest there. Not as a technique, not as a practice, not as a means to some future end. Just rest there in the simple fact of your own awareness, in the quiet aliveness of this present moment, in the extraordinary, ordinary miracle of being here now, alive, conscious, awake. This is what you have been looking for. This is what was always already here. Welcome home.